All right, welcome to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the bead and pour white lightning straight onto your brain. What are we talking about today, Semo?
Well, it's our first episode back from Germany, so I've got you a special beer there in a nice German mug.
Tasty.
You can't get that beer here, so enjoy. We are talking about Winter's Heart.
Should be able to, I was flipping through it on the plane down, and we should be able to cover a good chunk of time, just depending on what exactly we want to talk about, because there's like I think 3 chapters of Rand, and then we get 1 chapter of Elaine and Avienda, and then it goes back to Matt finally. So we should be able to get through that Elaine chapter. So that'll be a little over 100 pages if we make it all the way through. Oh, actually 2 Elaine chapters. So we'll see how far we get. Okay, but the first few chapters are Rand in his plan to lure the Ashaman to Farmading, where he can kill them. So there's lots of death and murder right off the bat.
Yeah, and I think we get it here, but a little background on farming would be beneficial. So what we kind of learn in these next few chapters is you can't channel there. They have some big giant Turin Grail of some kind that is counterintuitive to Turin Grail because it actually stops the power from being used, and it's male and female, right?
Yes, there's a bigger ring around the city where it blocks male channelers, but the thing that's curious, and I like that you never get an explanation for this. The thing that's curious, like you say, is that okay, well, it's got to use the power somehow, right? So then how does it work? Because there's no channeling, there's no power in this area, but yet somehow there's some sort of way, there's some sort of power for this device to not only block channeling, but alert you when someone in the vicinity has channeled. So that they know not just it's being blocked here, but then outside of that area for we don't know how far, you get it kind of pings that someone is channeling, and it separates, black for male channeling, red for female channeling. And Varen and Katzman actually use that to kind of unnerve the farmatting counselors here in a little bit.
Well, I would like to speculate here, and then just kind of it not to have too big of a tangent, but when we look at something like the Golem, that was made by the power, but it sucks in the power too.
Yeah.
So we could speculate that it might be something like that. And I don't know if it's like a plot hole or not to have these things exist.
Well, no, I don't think it's a plot hole, and I think it's who is it? Kimura, who's the white who's escorting Hareen and Shalom, the sea folk through here, and she makes the comment that when they're watching it of, what more can it do? But they don't let Aes Sedai in to study it, and she says out loud, surely when this was made during the breaking, there would have been great need for it to do other things. So surely it's more than just an artificial steadying and alerting you when someone nearby is channeling, because it's not just the protection, but there would have been a need to fight back to counter these male channelers. So what else could it possibly do? And that's kind of one of the overarching themes of the whole world building, and why the world building works is because, I mean, from one of the earliest chapters, when they're shouting out for Tom to tell these different stories, and you see these names that are seemingly familiar, and it's all about time as a circle, and so it's supposed to be alluding to things in our own history that have somehow now turned into myth, into myth and legend, and the past gets lost. It's one of the fascinating things, and I think why Graham Hancock and his stuff is so alluring is that mystery, because there is no written record for this era of history. We only have these giant stone ruins and speculation of what was this for? Why was this built this way? What is the significance of this? And you can only you can only make suppositions because there is no written record. And same thing here, that there's reference to works that survived the breaking in fragments. We get a few references to it, but you get the impression that pretty much nothing survived the breaking as far as written history goes.
Yeah, and this is similar to that the chair they were using in was the last book,
yeah, in Crossroads, when they were putting the black to the question. Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't know why this was used, but we could speculate. And it's interesting that someone from most possibly the Age of Legends thought that someone that could channel, thought that channeling was such a danger that they created a device that would protect an entire city from that.
Yeah. And then you also have to wonder, was this Terran Griel, was this made during the Age of Legends? Was this made during the time of Utopia, or was this made during the War of Power, or was this made during the breaking? There's some of that as well.
Yeah, actually, that little thought is probably the biggest, the most likely culprit is during the breaking they needed something, especially since it does seem to affect males more. It might have been that they couldn't do it without it affecting females, but they were able to mitigate that a little bit.
All right, so that's one of the kind of overarching things happening in these chapters. And before we started recording, you asked, what are these chapters about? And the first word out of my mouth was psychosis, because on page 501, just a couple pages into the first chapter, we get Lews Therin is back, and we kind of talked about this previously, that he'd kind of gone silent for a little bit, and there's a lot of speculation, because I don't know that Jordan ever addressed it, that why is it that at certain times Lews Therin quiets down, and you even get moments where Rand is trying to talk to him because he needs advice or he has questions or whatever, and he's trying to talk to the voice in his head, and he's getting pissed off that the voice in his head isn't talking back, which these chapters can lead you down an interesting rabbit hole of what exactly is the nature of that voice. Isn't that one of the things she says when she first shows up, is, have you started hearing voices? And is she the one who first puts out the idea that something about the taint breaks down the barriers between lives, and so you're remembering a previous life, you're remembering who you used to be, which means that the voice is real in a sense, but also not real.
Well, and we get back to our speculations on what the world of dreams is too, because there's something about the reincarnation process that goes through that, or else the heroes of the horn wouldn't be set there. And also, which might be why it's dangerous to go there in the flesh, because you're breaking that barrier down, and you may be exposing yourself to that rift a little bit more.
I hadn't thought about that. I like that hypothesis. That makes a lot of sense.
But then on the flip side, it seems to be only the most recent memory. Because we get Lews Therin's voice, we don't get Lews Therin before he was Lews Therin.
And we know that you can remember countless previous lives, because we get that from Birgitti's point of view before she starts to forget, before she gets pulled out in the flesh and all those memories start to fade. So,
but that's just like the dream too. You have a dream, no matter how vivid it is, it even almost instantaneously starts to fade.
So I had a thought while flipping through this with Lews Therin popping out, and it's not just that here he is again in full force, it's how raving he is. And it occurred to me that I think what Jordan is doing here on purpose is that the madness is a negative feedback loop. So the particular male chanter, the reason why so the madness takes some sooner than later, and we know there's a huge disparity between, when the madness takes some and others. We saw it in the a couple of books ago at the end of Path of Daggers, when the kid that goes crazy is the youngest one amongst the Ashaman who are there. I mean, I think he thinks at one point that he's barely shaving. So, I mean, he's a teenager. So he's only been channeling since he's been to the Black Tower, and he's the first to go.
Well, you could speculate two directions there, that it could be relative to the past life. Like maybe his predecessor was stark raving mad to begin with, or it could be just the mental capacity he had to begin with. Maybe starting that young made it too early for him to be able to process, because he's still in a developmental stage, where Rand was basically an adult.
And that's what I'm hypothesizing here, is that
or Damer Flynn seems to be completely unaffected, and he was an old man the first time he touched
That's a good point. He was a very old man.
Yeah.
And he'd been through a lot in his life. Rand had a lot of mental strengthening in his growing up, but then he also, as we've talked about, he had some nerves that were pretty raw, some areas where he was lacking, and that led to some problems here. So anyway, the idea that kind of bubbled up was, is the voice, is the reason Lews Therin is popping up here, is because the voice is a mechanism to push your psychological weaknesses, because something we saw where Rand started to lose it and Lews Therin started to come out as a separate personality that could be interacted with was at the end of Lord of Chaos, when he got stuffed in the box. And we got stuffed in the box, and he was, he was only let out to be tortured. And now Lews Therin's back, and it's because as Lews Therin kind of rants, he feels like he's in a box because the power's cut off. So even though he's not actually in a box, even though he's walking around outside, he feels like he's been confined again, and that's leading to his ranting and ravings.
Well, two things here. First of all, the observation that it's obvious that the voice is separate from the power, because the voice would go away in Farmading if it was completely tied to the power.
Yes, because as Chimera reiterates, and you kind of learn when you first learn about the steading, this is more than just being shielded, because it's not there. And we have points of view with someone with a shield, they can still feel the power, they can pull it towards them, and they feel, they can almost feel mentally this physical barrier that's there. And you see when Rand's doing it, he's sliding along the shield, he can feel knots where it's tied off. This is completely different because it is gone. You can't even sense it.
And then the second thing is, to piggyback on it's specific to what drives you crazy. Look at the nature of Rand and the nature of Lews Therin. Rand drives himself crazy with his obsession over the women that die in his life.
Yes.
And Lews Therin's act of ultimate crazy was killing Ilyena.
But
in a fit of desperation, and now you bring the box in. He's so afraid of doing the ultimate bad thing in a fit of desperation that Lews Therin is the perfect voice to drive him crazy.
And that's something that was brought up a lot on the forums, talking about the voice and where this came from, is people pointed out, one of the things that makes the Lews Therin personality so dangerous wherever it comes from is that was literally his last memory before he killed himself by drawing too much of the power and creating Dragon Mount. Is Ishi gave him clarity enough to realize what he had done. And so his last act was to kill not just Ilyena, but all of his family, all of his servants, all of his household. So that was his last act. He did that. And then his last moment of clarity was to just open up this madness, to just open up this psychological scar. And we don't know exactly how the rebirth process works, but you would think, it would seem that last memory is like the freshest feeling that Lews Therin has. And so of course he's going to dwell on that. But then I think Rand maybe, and I wonder, is he making it worse or is he making it better for himself by shoving so much of this psychological damage onto this personality in order to, does that hurt because it makes that personality even crazier? Or does that help Rand? Is that one of the things that helps him stave off the madness because he's able to push the madness into its own little confined space?
Well, I think it'd be helpful, and of course, it's actually good of Jordan to not have done this, but we can keep speculating and have this interest but it'd be helpful to see the progression of Lews Therin going mad too, because we just get him wanting to do the big thing, and then
oh no, because I remember now that actually was said that the 100 companions were struck with the madness at the moment they touched the Dark One.
Oh, so it was
theirs was instantaneous.
Okay,
yeah, and that's where, and I think one of the old Aes Sedai in Rand's last vision, with through the glass pillars in whatchamacallit, brain farting on the name.
Radiant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one of the Aes Sedai references that about the 100 companions, makes a reference to the 100 companions there and about the damage they did. So not only was it instantaneous, but it was the 100 most powerful male channelers, which makes them among the most powerful channelers, period, of the Age of Legends, all went mad instantaneously and started wrecking the world. And that's one of the things that made the breaking so damaging and so difficult to deal with. I think we're given that kind of hint or told more or less outright.
Which makes you wonder what the madness was for them, if the voice of that previous life is the madness for these people. Could it be a previous life being you all of a sudden? And that would be something breaking to the mind,
and having no coping mechanism, because it didn't come about gradually.
Yeah, no, it's not like, imagine us. So the theory is the age before the Age of Legends was like what we are. Imagine me and you all of a sudden appearing in the Age of Legends at the Boar. So not only,
that's a good point.
Not only are we appearing in this different time, different place, different technologies, different everything. Oh, by the way, I can do this thing that's supernatural. I am staring in the literal abyss as it's happening.
You are looking at pure entropy.
Yeah.
Which is, as we've talked about, that's what the Dark One is. But so one of the things that makes me wonder, all right, is he helping himself or hurting himself here, is when he rushes back to the others, and there's a moment here where is it where Min says yes? So 516. This is one of my favorite moments.
Well, you can't skip over that he just killed one of the Ashaman with his bare hands.
Oh yeah, this is some quality kung fu action there. Well, I'll back up in a second, and hopefully remember why I was going to back up. But on this point, one of my favorite scenes in the whole series is this scene here where Rand, Min said slowly, "You did all that, killed one man and faced another, and Rand, I didn't feel anything in the bond. I mean, no fear, no anger, not even concern, nothing. I wasn't angry with him." Shaking his head, he began shoving clothes into the hamper again. "He just needed killing, that's all. And why should I be afraid?" So
that's about as as deep into psychopathy as you can get. It's this needed to be done. I didn't feel anything. That's Dexter action right there.
And it's the culmination of what we've seen Rand doing to himself, trying to harden himself. Is, yep, there he goes. That's what he was going for, and he did it. But Min recognizes this can't be good. I don't want you, I don't want you being overcome with fear when you're in this deadly situation, but you should feel something. When you stop feeling something, that's cause for a concern. And so that's why I kind of connected the two, Lews Therin ranting at him while he's running through the town, and then that moment with Min. Is he like this because he's been able to shove all of these negative emotions into Luz Theron? Is Luz Theron being the convenient device for him to harden himself?
Well, maybe a yes and no on that, because a little further down on the page, he's talking in his head, or Luz Theron's talking to him. We are dead men. Dead men should stay quiet in their graves, but they never are. And when you couple that with what he said about just not feeling any emotion, you know, we have a term for it in English. It's we're dead inside, right? We're dead inside. We're already dead. We're just a meat puppet walking around doing this thing. And that's the way Rand is kind of thinking of himself.
I've been rewatching Band of Brothers recently because it's back on Netflix, and my favorite episodes by far are the two where they're in Bastogne, and you get it. Especially the one with Donnie Wahlberg as the lead, as the company first sergeant, and he's narrating through, talking about the psychological toll that was being taken. And this is one of the interesting things to me about Band of Brothers in particular, is because one of the things that most war movies leave out or get wrong because it's hard to show is how big a component artillery is in combat. And you can look at it, you can just look at the statistics, the volume of shells that were thrown out in, you know, in this or that battle, and the helplessness that you feel because there's no one to look at, there's no one to fight back against, there's no one to shoot, it's just falling from the sky. And
well, you get a good vision of that in the movie The Patriot, when those cannonballs are just bouncing along the ground and people are like, what? No, there goes my legs.
Nothing you can do about it. You just see it coming. But he talks of when he's narrating, he talks about the different kinds of losing it. And you know, you've got the guy who literally goes crazy. He's trying to dig a foxhole with his bare hands, and he hasn't noticed that he has literally ripped off every fingernail, and his fingers are a bloody mess. And you've got to get that guy out of there, not just, you know, as he says in the narration, not so much for his sake, but for everybody else. Is seeing that it's infectious. You know, it's the psychosomatic reaction of yawning because I yawn, you know, only on a much worse and much greater scale. And I wonder if that's part of what the voice of Luz Theron does, is he's able to shove all of those negative things into this one thing, this convenient excuse, for lack of a better word, of this is where all the negativity is. Because I grew up hearing that I'm a monster because I can channel, and I'm the monster because I'm the dragon reborn. But I can kind of say, no, it's not me, it's him, if I shove all this into Luz Theron, and then try and, you know, as you know, with the Band of Brothers analogy, you get him off the line, you get him back to an aid station as quick as possible. So I shove all this into Luz Theron, and I try and push him to the back of my mind as much as possible.
Well, and then, okay, so now we're getting into my realm when we ask the question, what is crazy? Right? So we've got, remind me of the kid's name, the one that started making the blocks.
Fedwin, I think that was Fedwin.
Fedwin, yeah. So we've got that kind of crazy where he just kind of loses his mind in a way where he becomes an adult child and just starts, it's completely so detached that he's tearing down the building to make a Lego block thing, right? But also now look at Rand. When we're thinking madness, and what he's thinking of madness is the losing my mind and killing everybody around me. But realistically, he's becoming psychopathic.
That's exactly, that's
a different kind of crazy. Yeah. And so Luz Theron is leading him down a path of being dead inside, being devoid of all emotion. And if we have no emotion, we have no empathy, we have compassion and empathy are different, but one leads to the other. And he's going to cease to have the capacity for compassion along the way, which is something he definitely needs as a leader of nations and as the savior. So we're getting to the end product. I'm going to destroy the world, or I'm going to be the savior, or I'm going to be both. Well, what did you lose in the process? If you lost any ability to think of anything but the end goal, you could destroy the world killing the Dark One, right? It's like, oh, me and you're the bad guy, I'm the good guy, and we're fighting right now, and I have access to nukes. And I drop a nuke on us right now because that's the winning strategy. It killed everybody else around me.
Mm-hmm.
So it's losing sight of the other parts of the end result just to get the job done. And that's part of the process here, where he's just losing emotion. I mean, even I'm sure if there's anybody in the military in the audience right now that has had to go through this, I mean, obviously you can do it anonymously. You talk about band of brothers. It takes a toll on you when you take a life. Even if it's a group of people and you just spray a position and you don't even know if you hit anybody, but you're pretty sure you did. That messes you up a little bit inside. He's losing that ability to be messed up inside. Different kind of messed up, different kind of crazy. And I think that's where Cwin is wrong a little bit, is everybody's looking for that just, we're going to wig out crazy.
Mm-hmm.
And he's already in the process of, I'm a psychopath crazy.
And that's why I brought up the Band of Brothers episodes, because in that same episode, you've got the obvious crazy where he's ripping off his own fingernails and doesn't even realize it.
See, but I would use a different term for that. I would use desperate.
Mm.
Desperate that it turned off your cognitive facilities just to try to.
But yes, colloquially speaking, we would still call that crazy.
Yeah.
But then there's the other kind of crazy, which is one of the lieutenants sees the two closest people in the company to him since training get hit by a shell, and they each get a leg ripped off, and he just starts staring at nothing.
Mm-hmm.
That's his crazy, is he just can't function. He just kind of mentally shuts down and starts staring at nothing, kind of can't talk, and so he has to be pulled off the line. So that's kind of the other side of what made me think of is you brought up the quiet crazy that Rand is going through here, which is turning into, or I guess now confirmation has turned into psychopathy, because we have confirmed that he felt nothing, absolutely nothing. And
think of like a great example of this would be Hannibal Lecter. He was a with it dude that was completely off his rocker. But he was completely in reality, except that he could not decouple this craving he had with what fits in the world as a functional human being.
Yep. I forgot what I was going to back up about.
Well, he killed the guy with his bare hands.
Yep.
Arrogance gets you nowhere, especially if you're fighting a guy who knows how to kill people with their bare hands. So that's why you don't get in bar fights, people. You don't know what people know. And that guy that looks a little frumpy on the other side of you could be a Green Beret. And that would be unfortunate for you.
You also don't know what people are capable of. Then the out of thin air, the other out of thin air here is Psalm and Luke. Is what we end on. So a nice little bit of what's going on in the shadow mystery there. That's loads of fun.
Yeah, and this is one of the few moments where I don't want to spoiler here, maybe we'll save it for spoilers, but where you slightly tie Perrin's role in the end to Rand. It's still a very thin thread. It's still a very thin thread. Yeah.
It's a good analogy because of the wheel and the weave and the loom, and so it's a good analogy for storytelling. And that's a pretty thin thread that is one of, as we talked about at the beginning of I think the last book is when we first got into it, of why Perrin's story going forward here is such a blah for us, is that it doesn't seem to go anywhere, and that's one of the things. But you do get, I like that he pulls Isam / Luke here. We haven't seen him in a bit, and he was part of Perrin's story, and now he's here, and with comfort. One of the few times you get actual confirmation from Jordan that, yeah, what you thought I said is what I said, when he thinks that he wants to, where is it? He had rather looked forward to killing his nephew. It is interesting that he knows that when so few other people know that.
Mm-hmm.
So I hadn't really considered before. Wait, how does Luke know that? Because how does he know?
Probably the dark prophecies.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
so that's just more on how much more informed the dark is.
And also he's privy to the world of dreams, and we see Perrin's experience too, where you get visions, and so he might have information from that ability as well. The world of dreams is the hub for all things that are convenient for making the story go forward. But he does it in a way that is not believable from a sense that we think it happens in real life, but believable in you've created this metaverse, this metaphysical universe, and you've been consistent since the beginning with it. But it also it's good to note that it works in Farmati. He steps in and out of the dream there. So it is completely unrelated to the power.
Yes, that's a good point. All right. Chapter 23 is mostly from the sea folk point of view. Which
favorite people
is I enjoy that Jordan is showing you how to deal with the sea folk. I don't enjoy that no one else really does it outside of Cwin. Is, as you pointed out, you people are bargaining in bad faith. We don't have to, and more to the point. So one of Hareen's rants here in the first couple of pages of chapter 23 is she's ranting about how Cwin let her come along, but where is my entourage? Where is the agreed to? And she keeps shouting about the bargain. Cwin has nothing to do with the bargain. You made that with Rand.
Yeah, Cwin's not even part of the tower. She's retired. She doesn't even have to stick to that part of it.
Yeah, that's a good point. So one, you're arguing in bad faith, and two, you're assuming since I have a bargain, I have a deal, so everyone must abide by it. No, just the people you made the deal with.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm Cwin in this moment and be like, oh, you're assuming everybody who can channel has to stick to this bargain you made. Well, all your Windfinders have to do it now too.
Sure, why not?
I'm not part of the tower.
Everything.
The only connection I have there is I can channel. And so yeah, all the wise ones have to stick to it. All the Windfinders have to stick to it. The domain, the Domine have to stick to it. Let's see how that goes for you. Go talk to them.
Yeah. Forgot the next chapter is also from Shalom's point of view.
Now Shalom was the Windfinder, right?
Yeah, she's the Windfinder, and her sister is the Nagi Wave Mistress. Who's haranguing her. Shalom is also the one that's trying to hide the fact that she had an affair.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. She was the pillow friend. Right?
Yes,
yeah.
Which amusingly, but he's problematic, so we can't praise Jordan. But amusingly, the fact that it was with another woman is totally irrelevant. It's the fact that she's married and they take those vows very, very, very seriously in Sea Folk society. So I'm doubly amused there.
Which, I mean, sorry, woman, all you have to do is go to your husband. He's probably going to be like, can I watch?
Well, the reason they take it so seriously is because spouses are often separated. It's the same reason that adultery is a punishable crime in the military for that reason.
It's the Tide box in the window. If you don't know what that is, Google search it.
Yeah. But most of this chapter is just giving us the background that we talked about at the beginning of what formatting is and how it works, because it's mostly explained here in this chapter with brain fart again, the Aes Sedai who's escorting and explaining things to Shalom and Hareen. I do enjoy Jordan giving us the outsider's perspective here, because we know kind of what's going on with the different factions here around Cwin, because you've got the four that were originally following Cwin from when she first shows up, and then you have some of them are Tower Aes Sedai and some of them are Egwene's Aes Sedai, but all of them have sworn fealty to Rand, but they've all viewed that those differently. And then you've got the shaman tagging along, who are now also warders.
Mhm.
So it's interesting to see it from the outsider's point of view, because it's from Shalom's perspective. So it does double duty, because it shows us, he's demonstrating that this is a very intelligent person. That's why she has risen to this very high rank. He's also kind of showing us what's going on. The second part is using it to show what's going on with these people who we haven't seen in a while, but doing it in an oblique way, because it's not one of them thinking about it. It's not one of them going through it. It's an outsider's point of view.
Well, and that also, as Jordan does a lot in these books, is it serves the purpose of giving you information without giving you everything.
Yes.
So that there's some mystery going forward that can be a good reveal later. I know you've complained about it with modern TV, where there's no setup and reveal, and this allows you to have that setup and then a reveal later.
Yeah, it's not a mystery box, you jackwagon. It's bits of mystery woven all through. That's what makes a compelling story. It's not because we have this mystery at the end of this maze. No, that's just a thing. And then once you get there, well, then it's gone.
Well, and it also allows you to have the phenomenon of, well, why did that person do that? That messed everything up. Well, now if Shalom does anything later that is kind of stupid from an outsider perspective, well, you've had her thoughts.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, that wasn't stupid from her mind.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which actually, from I'm going to set myself up to be a good writer, quite a kind of thing, it makes you vulnerable to these plot holes. And Jordan does a great job of exposing himself to that risk and then coming through in the end.
Yeah. Here's this plot hole, because something needs to happen here, and that moves the story along. But see, it wasn't a convenience, because I've already given you a hint of how this makes sense.
Yeah, it's the old, as a drinker would say, why did this person do this? Don't know. Right.
Yep.
Now we could say, well, why did Shalom do this? Oh, because this is what she was thinking in this chapter in Winter's Heart, and this is what their culture does, and this is how she was interacting with these people at that time, and so it's it completes the circle. There's the mystery box is opened, but the mystery is solved.
All right.
Bonds. James Bond.
I don't have much for the rest of this, because so much of what those two chapters, so much of what that is simply moving things along to immediately to chapter 25, which is back to Rand's point of view, and it's when Alana shows up. I do appreciate Min's I guess this is one of the reasons we have to cancel Jordan, because Min's reaction to Alana's about to walk through the door is to drape herself over Rand. It's literally marking her territory, because that's what happens.
Well, and think of this from a female perspective too. I'm not a female, but I play one on TV. Alana has something that is deeper than she gave him a blowjob before. She actually has access to his mind. She has a connection to him. What do women want? They want connection. She has a bond to him.
He knows. How does the bond work? She knows what he's feeling. And what do women always want to talk about?
Yeah, but they also want security, right?
True.
The bond she has with him, if he breaks it forcefully, he will die. And that's something that everyone wants with their man. It's not just a wedding ring. It's, oh, by the way, if you take that wedding ring off, you'll die in, a year or so.
Well, in that, I think it's interesting the way the connection works and how you see it demonstrated here by Alana, because once Cwin and then Min leave and he's talking to Alana alone, she's very possessive, even knowing that she pretty much literally raped him.
Mhm.
But she's still very possessive because partly tradition and partly, I would think, the feelings that go along with that bond. So it's not just that this is what an Aes Sedai and a warder mean. So Alana's got it doubly, because this is what an Aes Sedai and her warder mean, and you add on top of that the extra bit that comes from being green, like who have, you know, an even stronger connection to their warders.
Mhm.
And then on top of, then you add to that the feelings and the there's got to be some sort of serotonin kick when you're separated and then suddenly you're back together with your bond,
Mhm.
because they talk about feeling complete. That's actually something that they had in the awful episode that I had to watch because of crappy Wheel of Time, of when the Soldan puts the bracelet on, doesn't it feel good to be complete?
Mhm.
You know, they because of that bond, they mention that, but then you also get that sense from, at least from warders and Aes Sedai, that are actually close.
Yeah, and to go back to crappy Wheel of Time, this is where they keep getting the greens wrong. They're trying to make them hypersexualized. No, what the greens are is they're the battle agi, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which ups the importance of a warder, because you are in the midst of battle. And everybody who's ever been in battle, again, veterans, pipe up here if you're in the audience, knows that you're not watching every 360 yourself every moment of every time. You have to depend on your band of brothers.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole point of that show. That's why it's called Band of Brothers, because they're dependent on each other. And the Aes Sedai that choose green realize that this is a team effort. And I have this bond with people that are going to protect me, and I'm going to protect them, and we're going to do the job.
And what the creators have done is taken one little tidbit and say, this is how it is, because there are a few moments where it hints that some greens are sexually close, that some might even secretly marry their warder or warders.
But again, we'll go to David Lane Smith, who you listened to with me with Modern Wisdom. Dr. David Lane Smith, he does couples counseling, and this is his kind of claim to fame. And he talks a lot about bonding with your female partner. It is that deep bond that causes the sexuality to happen with the female partner. It's not the, oh, great tits, let's go to bed. You know, it's the, you know, it's the listening to her day, and it's the little things, all these things that arouses her. So you couple those two things together. We're the battle aja, and we're doing this thing together, and we're bonded in this way. But I'm a female.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm feeling all of these things, and you are facilitating all of those things as my warder. I am sexually aroused. It's different than what it's this surface level thing they're doing.
Yeah, very surface level.
Let's pause real quick so the dogs can go crazy. All right, sorry for that hiccup. Let me kind of just put that all together so we can get through the 100 pages we're trying to get through. It's the show lazily just makes the greens like super seductress. We're so sexual. Basically what you get when you go to the local strip club, which you're actually faking, by the way, if you didn't know. But it's more about the relationship they have with the people they're with is going to grow into something that actually turns women on. So yes, the greens are more sexual with their warders, and they tend to be married to them, even multiple ones, as we see with Myril, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, Myril, which they made into Alana in the show, which combining characters, that one makes sense. But yeah, it's so lazy just to be like, oh, we're so sexual, look at us, girl power, when it's really something very much deeper. And it actually explains the nature of being green, because then you don't have to wonder why being green makes you more sexual.
Well, that's a good point, because this is something that kind of occurred to me while we were talking, is that one of the ways where Jordan kind of hints at the way Greens are with their warders is Moraine and I think some others think or say something to the effect of that they're closer to their warders than other men are to their wives. And it just occurred to me, well, from a woman's point of view, that wouldn't necessarily be sexual at all.
No,
Because that would be true, is that you have to ask your husband to share with you, what your warder's feelings are. So just in that sense, they're already closer from the female perspective.
And this is also, when we look at male versus female jealousy, men will get jealous when she has sex with another man. Women get jealous when it looks like he's going in a relationship route with that other woman. And yeah, the sex does matter, but it's more powerful in one direction in the other. Where a guy, if she's got a, gay Patsy best friend, is going to be like, okay, fuck it. She can talk to him all day. I don't have to do it.
The thought I had when you were going down this tangent is that modern writers when they write sexual tension, it's so bad because it's fan fiction, and it's
what guys think women want versus what women actually want.
Or even if it's a female writer, these people all come from hookup culture land, which
is dysfunctional.
It warps these kinds of things. And this is a thought I'd had going all the way back to the Mass Effect games, because you can have relationships with the different characters and they theoretically carry over through the games. And when I was playing Mass Effect 2, I was wondering, who are the poor virgin nerds who wrote this? Because they have no idea how a relationship works. This is not how you would treat someone who you were in a long-term relationship with. This is just bizarre. And because it's fan fiction. That's why. But it also, along with what you've ranted about, which is the diversity and how lazy and surface level that is, pointing out that, well, since Lan is an Indian actress, they have to make her super duper Indian in the way she dresses, along with the others that they brought in, like Varen now, that's just their surface level, because they don't think about these things in any sort of substantive way, but they know that they're diverse and where they live is diverse. And this is great because, you're in a, you're either in Metro LA or Metro London or something like that. And okay, yeah, but you're not in the real world, man.
It's just Tim Pool talks about this a lot. He's takes somebody from downtown New York and asks them something like, where does chicken breast come from? And they'll say the supermarket.
Yeah.
It's not, there was actually a chicken that had to be, grown and fed and all of these things.
All right. So, speaking of bonds and things, so the thing about this chapter that I'm curious about, in light of what we were just talking about with Rand and his crazy, and then how Cwin factors into that. Do you think the way as we said, she's diagnosed the problem, but do you think the way she's trying to treat it here actually works, or does it make it worse?
Well, how many more books do we have to get through to where it's treated?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So he speaks coarsely, and she warns him once to watch your tongue. You're supposed to behave yourself around me. And then when he swears again, she full arm slaps him. And I guess technically, sort of, when they leave, he's nice to Alana. So did it work? Or I have to think no. I have to think that I think she's on the right track quicker than Moraine was. Moraine was pretty darn stubborn. And that probably just goes with having 2 centuries more life experience than Moraine. But it takes her a while to get on the right track here.
Well, she is on the right track. The problem is she doing it properly? Because everybody needs somebody to push back. So let's take a historical figure from the real world, Stalin. Stalin's biggest problem was he never had pushback.
Uh-huh.
And he never had pushback because he killed everybody.
Uh-huh.
And Cwin is the pushback.
Yeah.
But she's also kind of relying on Rand to not kill everybody.
Yeah.
And so she's kind of walking a tightrope here. And ultimately, I think it is part of the healing process for him. But it's at a dangerous time in the process right now.
Yeah, and it is helping in one sense, it's filling a void in one sense, but then it's pushing his buttons in another, because the way she does it, we've talked about before, one of Rand's problems is he doesn't have a maternal side, because he doesn't even really remember his mother, because she died when he was so young. Well, so he does need a motherly, maternal example, and Moraine started to be that at the very end there, before she her showdown with Lanfear. And now Cwin comes in, and he needs that maternal guide, but she's being a disciplinarian, and he doesn't need that because he grew up with a father.
Yeah, except, well, this is a tough one because it takes a village in this point to raise the child, and she is the disciplinarian mother, but at the same time he just now reconnected with the real mother, which is Nynaeve. And they're just now getting back into the groove. And so between Nynaeve, Cerelia, and Cwin, you kind of have the complete mother that he never had.
That's a good point, because going forward, I'll just tiptoe around this so it's not spoilery, but we see one of Cwin's flaws, and we've kind of talked about, is she has so much more life experience and power than everyone else. She just kind of assumes no one else can do anything. And she's very slow to make Nynaeve part of her effort.
Well, and I'm sure this might be a spoiler. So let me say it softly, and then you tell me if we need to go over it more in spoiler section. Cwin also is the only female in this world that can physically assault him and get away with it. Because of his strength and the power. So there is a little bit of spoilery to this as we go through. Well, although I think we learn it in these chapters, right? Why she is not vulnerable to men channeling.
Yeah, we're gonna learn about her ornaments here in this book.
Okay,
which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So that was my thought there, because when Alana, she can't rebuke him the same way that Cwin can, obviously, or Min can, but she does kind of tell him he's being a jerk, and well, more than that, she tells him he's being dumb without telling him he's being dumb, because you have all these tools and you're not using them. You're trying to do everything yourself, and you have all of these very experienced, women of various ages, and he was starting to learn the lesson when he finally let whoever it was who went to do the gray, that went to do the Marana to do the negotiating with the sea folk. But you don't just, people don't just turn on a dime, especially from something that's been ingrained in them. And Rand's stubbornness was deeply ingrained, and that turned into arrogance, which turned into him doing everything himself. So he doesn't turn on a dime, but Alana does kind of set him down and say, hey, you're kind of being a dummy. And he kind of grinds his teeth because he doesn't like her talking back, but he does kind of agree and go along and say, okay, here's what I want you to do. And then he sends her out to collect some very other Aes Sedai that he has tasks for. So in that sense, maybe Cwin is having some sort of effect. But I think
well, any productive pushback is good for a leader.
yeah.
I wish I would have had more of it when I was running a business, but it has to be done in the right way, the right time.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. Oh wait, before we move on from this chapter, yeah, it ends with a Varen point of view, which is very interesting. Because you get Varen point of view, and she's talking to Cwin, so you know, double fun there. And I love this last paragraph. Cwin is finally opening up to Varen, which, you know, we kind of previewed. One of her flaws is the same as Rand's, actually, the exact same as Rand's, and now she's finally opening up to Varen in a similar way that she did to Cerelia, to kind of let her. I mean, she says out loud, and I have to feel like this is the first time she said this to Varen, that he can do whatever he wants so long as he survives to get to Tarman Gaiden, and I can teach him laughter and tears along the way. So she's finally saying out loud, I feel finally, to Varen, what it is that she's trying to do here.
Okay, and this, I'm kind of mad at myself for not thinking this an hour ago in this conversation. We just talked about Cwin getting it wrong with Rand, thinking of the madness as just this thing he's going to blow everything up, right? No, she's got it right, because she understands that he's losing emotion. What else is teaching somebody laughter and tears than teaching somebody emotion? That you have to actually have this thing inside of you that can feel empathy for people, that can feel pain yourself, that can actually allow you to express it. Laughter is expression of joy. Tears are expression of hurt. And so she actually has correctly diagnosed this. And I take back my statement from an hour ago that said she missed the point, because she's right. Now the process, like you said, slapping him in the face, is that going to do it? You know, in the right time, right place. We'll see.
Then the very last paragraph of this chapter. Oh yes, of course. This is Varen speaking. Hastily filling a second cup, Varen slipped the small vial back into her pouch unopened. It was good to be sure of Cwin at last. Do you take honey? She asked in her most muddled voice. I never can remember. She was just about to poison and kill Cwin, right? That's not just me that has read that.
No, that happened
from the first time I read that. She was going to kill her. That's interesting, because that tells you something about Varen, if that's true.
Well, and you know, even as we go forward in this, when we're questioning everybody, there's nothing in the 3 oaths that forbids poison.
Oh, you're right. You just can't kill
with the power. Yeah. Or you can't make a weapon that can kill with the power. As long as she didn't make the poison with the power, she can use it. She could stab somebody with a knife. She could, slit somebody's throat, bang them in the head with a hammer. Just can't use the power.
All right. So that was the end of Rand for a bit. And then we have 2 chapters of Elaine. Do you think we can get through all that?
I don't even know how long we've been going. When did we start?
I have no idea. I'm old and forgetful.
I wish they had a timer on Zoom. Which they don't.
It's been probably close to an hour.
Yeah. Let's shoot for it. We've been off for about a week and a half.
So. All right. Well, I don't have a ton to say about this, because it is mostly interesting stuff happening. We do the opening is maybe interesting in that we're seeing Egwene and we don't see her for a bit.
Thankfully.
Yeah, from the time we had that moment where she tricked the tower and tricked them into declaring war, and then we haven't really gone back to them except to see Egwene and hear about what's going on. And we see her being the tyrant, as Sam would say. But she's not necessarily wrong in what she's complaining about the difficulty with. I mean, for crying out loud, it was just a year and a half ago or something like that you had just barely gotten permission to braid your hair. You're just barely
and then pushed it into a river. Oh wait,
that part no.
Yep. Oh
no,
never mind.
So, and now all of a sudden you're the most powerful person in the world, and the top of this hierarchy that we're pledging ourselves to.
Let's be technical here. Tied for most powerful person in the world at the moment.
Well, politically, historically, but yes, right now tied. I do have a fondness for these chapters, mostly because this is about the point where I thought Elaine's story stopped being interesting and started being a slog.
Yeah.
So these two chapters are nice because he really gives you, and this is where I feel like I don't know why he wrote some of the chapters that he wrote, because we don't see it for Egwene. A lot of what we see here going forward is these two chapters end with Elaine being informed that 4 armies are marching on Camelin, and she starts giving orders to make preparations for a siege. So that's not that much different than what Egwene is doing here, just sitting around. First she's going to be sitting around what she's been doing lately, just sitting around recruiting and gearing up for, and then we know, because he ends with it, that they make a huge gateway and the whole army travels to Tar Valon. So then you're going to have a siege there. And so you don't actually get a whole lot of Egwene going forward, even with the siege, because so much of it is going to be repetitive. So for the love of all that is holy, Jordan, why did you do it with Elaine? Because much of what's going to come, he really already set the stage for it. He's already given us what is happening and what is going to happen, because it's all set up for here with what Elaine is having to go through and having to juggle. I'm not actually the queen yet. I'm just laying claim. I'm a full Aes Sedai, but a lot of people don't really buy it. Oh, and I'm pregnant. So he sets the stage very well for what's going on with Elaine right here. And so then I feel like we're just treading new ground later.
Sometimes, I don't know if you've ever had this moment where something sounds great in your head and then you say it and it just doesn't hit the same. Anybody who watched the last GOP debate, there was a lot of that. There was a lot of lines that were obviously pre-scripted and they did not hit the way pretty much everyone that seemed pre-scripted didn't hit the way I am assuming the writers thought.
Exactly. What you want there is you're expecting, ooh, this is going to be a big applause line, and we're going to clip this and make it go viral.
Yeah. And I think he might have really just liked Elaine as a character in his mind. And he's like, you know what? This is where I'm gonna cut my political teeth in these books. And we all know he liked Matt, but I think he saw Elaine as kind of a little bit of a counter to Matt. Yeah. He came from what Matt has become, and she had to learn to be humble, and Matt had to learn to be a leader. Yeah. And I think he really liked that dynamic. It just worked better for Matt.
It works a lot better for Matt.
Yeah. Because we all like the pauper to king story. But it's really a more tough sell for the princess to just a little bit of hardship to be princess again, princess. And
then queen.
And then queen. Yeah. It was the same concept, just a harder sell. And I think it's not an inspiring story. But he thought he could make it that way. And it's not a failure on his part. It's just you took a tough road, and it was as rough as we thought it would be.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't know that it necessarily would have been helped if he wouldn't have been ill and then died.
Yeah.
Because I think there would have been at least one, if not two more books.
Well, and we
if he'd
saw
been
that.
able to take his time.
So you said with these chapters with Elaine, it's very similar to what happened with him with Perrin. Because in book 4, he did so good with Perrin.
It's true.
That then the progression from there was very, I mean, almost regressive at some point.
And I think part of that has to do with just needing or wanting to fill space, because a lot of the stuff that happens through Perrin is the same rant about Elaine. Is we didn't need all this stuff. A lot of it is very repetitive, as far as what's going on and who's doing what, and who's whining about what. But
well, and a big shame here too is one of my favorite sub characters was Brigitte.
Yes,
and it made her kind of boring too.
That's a good point, because Elaine becomes so one note, and you start to see it here. Is I'm invincible. I can do whatever I want. I need to do whatever I want because that's how I'm going to become queen. And so that only gives Brigitte one response, which is no, don't do that, because no, you're taking too big a risk, and I'm not happy in this position I'm in, where I have to both be your general and your personal bodyguard, your warder. So he sets all that up right there. And, just one or two reminders as the books progress would have been fine. We didn't need the big chunks we get.
Well, and a little bit of missed opportunity is you could have had Avienda be more dynamic in this space, and she wasn't.
That's a good point.
She was mostly just the girlfriend that takes Elaine's side every time. And Brigitte's the girlfriend that always was like, no, you need to slow down.
And it's a shame because maybe one of the reasons he liked Elaine so much and wanted to have so much of Elaine in there is because that rounds out Rand's story, because the girls are critical, a critical part of it, men especially. But then by doing what he does with Elaine, it also kind of makes Avienda one note, just like with Brigitte, and we don't see her grow. And she's very much the fourth wheel in that relationship, because after, it's side people complain that if you have two characters in a show or a sitcom where there's sexual tension, you can't ever have them get together because then they will die. Well, Moonlighting is the classic example, but that's just because they were practically done with the story anyway, and they lost their originality.
Moonlighting, was that Sybil Shepherd?
That was Sybil Shepherd, for sure.
I had such a crush on her when I was a kid.
So it feels like that with Avienda's story. Is there's a lot there right before they make Whoopi. Another throwback there. And then, so there's a lot of build up to that. And then you get some nice personality when she's going to Elaine to, help me meet my toe. And then she kind of gets lost in the background, especially not just who she is as a character, but especially how she connects to Rand. It's like,
well, especially now that we've reached a point where she can connect to him because she is a sister wife.
Yep.
She technically has no toe to connect to him now. In fact, she might have G to do so.
Maybe.
I don't know how. Yeah, it's complicated.
It is complicated. Did you have any other thoughts about these chapters?
No. I'm 100% in agreement with you, because it does become a slog. And I remember even in the first reading, not just in the rereads, I was like, more Elaine.
Yep.
And it does suck, because she is one of the ones I did like in like Dragon Reborn and those early chapters. I think she really was a good glue for the girls in the tower, which is why I hate how they introduced her in the show.
That's a good point for the how broken this is that we were just ranting about, because she's necessary. They are a tripod in that storyline, because each one of them is their own unique dynamic character. And so they all bring something different to the party. They all have very different personalities. And then he completely forgets that here, where we should be having the same thing of Elaine, Avi, and Birgitte, and their clashing personalities. But because Elaine becomes so overbearing and so I'm the princess, she just runs right over anybody else.
Mm-hmm. And we even lose something we had in like the previous probably 8 or 9 Elaine chapters. Dylan becomes less of a voice.
Yeah.
And she could have been that unifying voice that was like, hey, princess.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know the ins and outs from a textbook standpoint, but you've been gone a long time.
Yes.
And you're also very young.
Yep.
And you know, yeah, I'm technically your biggest rival who's supporting you, which is kind of weird, but there's a reason people want me.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to listen to that, because we need to make those people want you. Yep. And we got that in her initial dealings, but we didn't we start to lose that going forward.
Yep. All right, did we have any spoiler things or comments that we wanted to look at?
Ash Scott came back. We got a comment from the last one. Eugenian became suspicious about the soul dam because of the conversation with the Raven agent.
Nope. She is talking to him, and so he gives her plenty of to be suspicious about. But when he leaves, she goes down to the basement, and that's where she's got, I don't remember who, collared. So she's already collared someone. And I remember that what I said there, I know exactly what he was talking about, is because I pondered, I think it's a plot hole. I don't know that we're ever given a good reason that she would think to collar a soul dam, because she knows perfectly how this works.
Did she discover the ones that Egwene collared and Min collared?
I don't know how she would have.
Yeah.
But it is, but she's already got her collared. When the guy with the raven tattoos, a brain fart on what they're called, seekers, when he'd already showed up, that's why that's why it's such a well-written scene, because it's from her perspective. But Jordan never gives anything away. He just gives away her emotion, that she is struggling, she's stressed out about something, but she's keeping it masked
on the DL,
and how she fights through that anxiety to get him out of there. And then it's, oh gosh, big sigh of relief, because she already had, I think it was Bethamin collared. Mm-hmm. We know she lets her go after she talks with the Nynaeve and Elaine, because she learns, oh, these aren't rabid dogs, which is how I was raised. Mm-hmm. So that's why I would think that's why she left her collared, because you can channel, you're dangerous. But now I know you're not. So we know why she let her go. I still think there's a hole there of why did she collar him in the first place?
Well, with her rank, you can kind of speculate something to the extent of Turok is dead. Mm-hmm. All his servants are dead. Any witnesses are dead. And someone found the collared person and said, who do I go to now? I need to pass this on. And
that's something, is she could have spilled the beans to Yanin, thinking somebody higher up has to know this. And then Ganin's reaction was, wait, that means if you found 2 Soldam that were collared up, that means you can channel too, maybe. Mm-hmm. Let's see, let's find out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But that would be the most obvious path. If it shows up somewhere in the books, please let us know, Scott, because you're very good at combing this stuff. Now, you commented also on our last episode. I still question why Amazon spent so much money buying a classic fantasy series, then completely threw away everything that made it great, only to let the writers and Judkins write their own story that diverges from Jordan's story. Well, we can look at this from 2 different perspectives. One is they're completely delusional and they thought they were making art. That's one perspective, and I do believe there's an element to that because artists then tend to be detached from reality a little bit.
Well, I can't remember, some of the people I watch have cited it several times. I think it was a Vanity Fair, a long piece on the streamers. This was like 4 or 5 months ago, maybe, that this came out. And it was an in-depth article about how basically when it comes to things like Prime and even like Disney Plus and these other streamers that all popped up really quick and then started doing their own studios, but especially Amazon, it's a vanity project. That's how they can spend so much money, is because this is a ludicrously rich individual on a vanity project. I have so much money, instead of going to space, Bezos, well, okay, he's going to space too, but
in his big penis rocket.
But he said, I want a movie studio. So something they point out in this article is that, I don't know that it's necessarily true anymore because they've combined so much, but the different studios used to have their own style, their own kind of operating ethos. So this studio would put out more of the brainless 80 action. This one would be more, the dramas, whatever. There is no identity at Amazon Studios because their only ethos is, give Bezos his Game of Thrones.
Which they completely, I don't know, you brought up before, they pulled back in every moment they could have done that.
Yep.
There's not, I mean, even with the fake CGI Trollocs, there's no gore. I mean, you could hack a Trolloc in half and nobody in the audience is going to go, oh, I feel empathy for that thing. Why aren't you doing that?
Well, that is, to Scott's question, that is one of the odd things about the cost, though, to me, isn't that these people on these vanity projects would spend that much money. It's where'd the money go, because the budget for this was supposedly high. The ones for Rings of Power were supposedly really high. I've thought they've both looked very cheap.
Well, how much money went to administration and diversity statements and things along those lines?
Yep, we know that's why Salky came in. It was to basically to implement that kind of stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it's, these people make 6 figures to write letters on how horrible you are because you didn't meet a diversity goal or something.
Yeah.
So but then that segues into number 2 of my 2 things. And one is, this is how activism is. They bought this because now they own it. And it doesn't matter how pissed off as fans we get. All we can do is get on YouTube and talk shit. That's the extent of what we can do, because now they own it.
Yep.
We can't even build a new movie studio and make a Wheel of Time adaptation for ourselves because they own it.
Yep.
So they can push their message at you with no repercussions at all.
But it's the danger. It's why Marxism is a dirty word, because it's why a lot of postmodernist philosophy, which comes from Marxism, is dirty, is because it's all about power. It's all about power dynamics and power politics, and they have the power, so they can do whatever they want.
Yeah,
and should.
And this is where projection comes in, because which is everybody knocks Freud, but projection was actually a Freudian thought. They do what they say everybody else does.
Yes.
They say because Jordan was making something original, he was projecting himself and his power dynamics. So they bought his thoughts and they use it to push their thoughts, and it's
project their power dynamics.
So yeah, power means everything, because that's what you're going to do with it.
Yep.
It doesn't mean that's what everybody else is going to do with it, especially the person making the original work that probably was a mixture of I have these thoughts in my head, so I want to do it, which is kind of like why we do this. And hey, I want to sell books and make a living because I like writing for a living. That's my, I feel is my calling. And so that's all he probably was thinking in his head. Not, I am going to express my dynamics on how gender and marriage and Rand's with 3 women because I'm a polygamist at heart. No, that's not what Jordan was thinking. He was thinking there's these dynamics all over the world, and this makes a great story.
Yep. Yeah. We've ranted about that ad nauseum. Is that there's story's the point, the message is the point. Which do you think is going to make a better story?
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, that's all I got for that. Then we didn't have any other comments, did we?
Nope, that was it.
All right, then we'll see y'all next time.
Yep. Later.